Hey everyone, today I thought we'd switch gears a little bit and take a look at another project I've been working on. I got this Tamiya M-05 kit for Christmas. Just going to have a little bit of fun with it. I have some friends that have other M chassis cars. Thought it would be pretty neat to be able to get out and bash them around a little bit. As with anything else, I can't leave it alone, so I have started doing some modifications to it, and I thought I would start to show you guys what I've been doing with this. Today I thought we'd take a closer look at this front bumper I made. As you can see, I've also trimmed the body in a way that it also looks like a splitter. So not only do we have some durability there, we got a little bit of style to go with our added protection. The bumper is actually pretty easy to make, only requiring a few materials and some tools that I have here in the workshop. You could easily form these materials with a Dremel tool with some basic cutoff wheels and sanding discs. I did use a bandsaw and a belt sander because I have it here in the workshop. Now the materials we have are a piece of angle aluminum that I got from a local hardware store, and a piece of black Kydex. You can get Kydex from an online retailer, hobby shop, or other place that sells plastics and metals. Kydex, if you don't know, is a pretty hard black plastic, and it's formable with heat, and it's pretty easy to cut and drill. Now there are two small modifications you do have to make to the car itself for this to work. First being removing the small nub on the front of the chassis here. You can see how you did it with a Dremel tool, made quick work of it. Just make sure you don't go too far because the gear case is behind there. Second is taking a little bit off the bottom of the factory bumper. I played around with not doing this a couple times, but it made my front bumper sit way too low, and I was worried about it dragging everywhere and getting caught on the surfaces that we run on because they're not the smoothest in the world, and the idea is here to add a little bit of protection and not get hung up on everything. After you've made those modifications to the chassis and the front bumper, you're going to want to go ahead and make the mount for your new front bumper. We're going to use our original bumper as a guide, laying it in our aluminum channel. And you're going to want to do two different things. One, trace the outside of the actual bumper itself, and two, mark the 4 location holes on the aluminum channel. Now I'm going and skipping ahead a few steps here, but I'm doing that for time, and I think you guys will pretty much grasp what's going on here looking at the end result. So the first step obviously was to mark where our mounting holes were. The reason why we're doing that is this piece actually is going to sandwich in between the factory bumper itself and the front of the car. That's what's actually going to hold on the bottom of our new bumper. When making this bracket, there are a couple things that you want to look out for that I obviously learned while doing mine. First off, you can't just go straight down when you're cutting that. It'll hit the A-arms there, so you do need to make sure you make your clearance down at the bottom here. That's why I have this little kick up. Second, you want to make sure you leave enough material at the bottom for our bumper to mount onto. Now I did go ahead when I drilled these holes and tapped them, because if you look, the bumper on these back 2 holes, there isn't any room to put any sort of nut. Now I could have cut this more and put nuts on the back of it, but since I have a 3mm tap, I figured why not. Now on the front, there was enough room to do a nut, so I will show you later on the end result. You'll see there is a nut there, even though all 3 of those holes are tapped. Now we've gone ahead and mounted our new bumper bracket behind the factory bumper, sandwiching it in between the factory bumper and the chassis. As you can see now, this is why we actually went ahead and removed some material from the factory bumper, because we're able to actually move this up so that our bumper would be more even with the bottom of the chassis. Now I suppose you could have left the factory bumper off there, but I like the fact that it covered up our front A-arms and our shocks, and I figured the added protection isn't going to hurt. Now the next step is to make a template so we can cut out our bumper material. Now I learned a couple things doing this. I'm not going to lie and tell you I got it right the first try. It did take me quite a few, but it's a lot easier doing it on paper or cardboard than it is wasting all of your material. Now I do like to use graph paper, as you can see here. I think it's a lot easier to line it up side to side, make sure it's symmetrical, and mark our locations for the mounting points. There are a couple things that you do want to make sure you leave enough clearance for. Most important being the front tires here. They do spin in an arc. I went ahead and used a roll of masking tape to make my lines for the arc there, and then I went ahead and transferred my outer body line and then added some material so that I can get the idea of what I needed for the front bumper. Like I said, I made it more of a splitter look, so we got some design and some style in there too. The next step is to go ahead and transfer your template to your bumper material. Now I'm going to give you a couple tips here, things that have helped me, especially with this dark Kydex. You want to go ahead and try to pick yourself up one of these silver Sharpies. As you can see, you can mark on it pretty easily, you can see what you're doing, and you don't have to sit there and try to guess, was that your line or not, when you're going and putting it on your bandsaw to cut it out, or using your Dremel, or whatever tool you prefer. Now another thing you could do is go ahead and line the whole thing with masking tape, lay it down, and then draw on it. I've done that in the past as well, but in this case, I just decided I'm going for something quick and easy and used the silver Sharpie. The other thing you'll notice is I went here and I taped a couple different spots. It's a lot easier to tape it down and have to go back and add your mark where the tape was than sit there and try to hold it and trace one part and then move around and trace the other part and hope you didn't move it, especially when it comes to marking your center holes. Now I always use a center punch when I mark my center holes. As you can see, I've already put those there. I can go right through the template into the material and I know exactly where I need to drill. Once your material's marked, you can go ahead and cut it out. Now a tip here, always cut away from your line and then sand back to it. It might take a little bit more time, but I'm telling you, it's easier to sand back to your line than try to cut on it, cut too much off, and then you gotta start all over. I know it's easy for me to say because I'm using a belt sander to sand this, but I'm telling you, this stuff is pretty easy to work with, and the little bit of time it will take you to cut away from the line and sand back to it is a lot less time than starting all over because you got too close to your line and then now you messed up and you're wasting material and all those other things. Another thing you'll notice, I slotted my screw holes a little bit. That gave me a little bit more adjustment when I go to put this on the car to make sure it goes exactly where I want it to go. And then I went and countersunk the bottom of the screw holes so that way I could use countersunk screws to keep the bottom nice and smooth so we don't have to worry about screw heads getting caught on anything as we're using the car. Another tip, save your template. Now this stuff is pretty durable, but it's not bulletproof. So if you're out there with your buddies and you have a little bit too much fun and you bust this thing up, if you have your template, you won't be too upset because you got enough material. You can go ahead, cut another piece out, put it on the car, and you're back out having fun in no time. Once you have your bumper all cut out and cleaned up, you can go ahead and attach it on that piece of angle that we installed earlier. As I stated before, my back two holes were tapped with an M-03 tap. They're not very expensive and they're pretty easy to get a hold of, so if you don't have one in your workshop and you do a lot of custom work with your RC cars, I do suggest you pick that one up. If you just want to go ahead and use lock nuts like I did on the front here, you can go ahead and just trim the bumper a little bit more so you have room, or leave it off completely. But again, not a hard tool to get a hold of, probably a good idea to have it in the workshop. A couple more things I'll point out before I let you guys go. I did most of this before I painted and trimmed the body. That allowed me to leave the little bit of material here under the bumper in the body so that I can get it right up against this bumper we made, and that's what gives it that splitter look. Another thing I did is bent the aluminum angle just ever so slightly so I have a little bit of kick up here. I'm hoping that'll help bounce us up over anything that I might hit instead of digging in and flipping me over and ending my fun and putting me in last place against my buddies. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please subscribe, hit like, and as always, I'll catch you next time.